Okay, so today we're going to look at how to use proportions to solve percent problems, so percent of quantities and so on. So let's take a look at what a proportion is. Alright, so we should be writing this in our math notebook, so if you don't have that out, make sure you have that out, please. But if you remember from last chapter, a proportion is simply an equivalent ratio. So let's look at a real basic example. So let's say 1 to 2 is equal to 2 to 4. Okay, so if, this is the most basic form of a proportion. And if you remember from last chapter, to check to see if they were equivalent, other than, knowing it was, we can cross multiply. So 2 times 2 is 4. 1 times 4 is 4. And since these 4's right here are equivalent, we know that the proportion is equivalent. And the reason that that's important to know is because that can help us solve for missing values. So let's take that same proportion, and this time, let's say we don't know one of the values. Alright, so 1 to 2 is equal to x to 4. We can still use the same process to find out the missing value. So if we cross multiply here first, 2 times x. If you think about it, 2 times x, it's saying 2 times a number. Since we don't know what that number is, we're just going to rewrite it as 2 times x, or 2 times a number. Alright, if we cross multiply here, 1 times 4 is 4. So we end up with an equation that looks like this: 2x equals 4. Now, our goal is to get x by itself. And if you read this statement, 2 times x equals 4, if you think about 2 times, it's saying it's multiplication. So to undo that multiplication, and again, this is a whole nother lesson on algebra, but this is just a quick demonstration to help you with percent problems. But if it's 2 times a number, to undo that, we're going to divide. And whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other side. So we're going to divide by 2. Now, if you're wondering, why did I draw that line? That line, if you think about it, looks like a fraction. Fractions are division problems. So if we look at it, these 2's right here, so the 2 over 2, that's really just 1. So those are going to cancel out, and we're just left with x. So I'm going to write it down there. And if we simplify the right side, 4 divided by 2, that's 2, so that gives us x equals 2. Alright, so again, that's just one way to solve for a proportion. That's going to really help us when we're trying to find or solve percent problems where it's not nice and neat. So let's take a look, for example. Let's say we're trying to find 42% of 15. 42% of 15. So first of all, what we need to understand is how to set up a proportion. And a proportion is going to look like this. It's going to be the percent on the right side, so percent over 100, because a percent's always out of 100, equals the part over the whole, like a fraction. Alright, so I'm going to go to a new page. If we remember that our problem is 42% of 15, the percent on the left side is going to be 42 out of 100. It's going to be equal to, if we think about it, it's hard to understand if it's the part or the whole. And so the easiest way I have found to explain it is if it's of something, so like of 15, that typically means that it's going to be the whole. So it's saying of 15, so that means it's going to be the whole, it's going to be on the bottom. So what we're going to do is put an x on top, or really any variable, and then we're going to start cross multiplying. So 100 times x gives us 100x, and 42 times 15, 630. Okay. So now what we're trying to do, again, we're trying to get x by itself here. Alright, so if it's 100 times x, we're going to divide both sides by whatever's next to the x. So in this case, it's 100. So these hundreds on the left side cancel out, and I'm just left with x. And 630 divided by 100, remember we talked about last week, you can just move the decimal back in twice, would give me 6 and 30 hundredths, realizing though that last 0 isn't necessary, so it's really just 6 and 3/10. Okay, so 42% of 15 is 6.3. Now, in lesson 5.6, you're not always going to be solving for the part that you might not know the whole. So why don't we do this? Let's take a look on page 305, or 303, excuse me. And let's take a look at number 1, where it says 9 is 25% of something. Now, this part right here where it says 9 is 25%, that's giving it away that 9 is the part. Okay, it's saying 9 is only 25% of something. So, what we're going to do is we're going to set up our proportion, which is, first of all, the percent. It's 25 out of 100. Equals, remember, it's part over whole, and we know the part this time, so that's 9 over x. We don't know what the entire amount is. Alright, so again, cross multiply. I always start like this, but it doesn't matter which way you start. 100 times 9 is 900. And 25 times x is 25x. Alright, and so what we're going to do is, again, we're trying to get x by itself, so we're looking at this side here. We're going to divide by whatever is next to x. So we're going to divide both sides by 25. Now I'm running out of room, so I'm going to have to write it on this right side over here, so I'm going to draw a line to kind of separate my work. The 25s cancel, so I'm just left with x. And 900, I'm going to do it on a calculator. 900 divided by 25 is 36. So what that's saying is 9 is 25% of 36. Alright, we're going to try one more together, and then I'm going to have you try some on your own. So let's take a look at number 2. It says 14 is 10% of what? So if you remember, the percent is on the left side, so we're going to take this 10% and write 10 out of 100. On the right side, it's going to be the part over the whole. If you remember from this last problem, whenever it says 14 is 10%, that's a dead giveaway that 14 is the part. So since 14 is the part, we don't know the whole, x is going to go on the bottom. So if we cross multiply, 100 times 14 is 1,400. 10 times x is 10x. So what we're going to try to do is we are going to try to get x by itself. So we look at this side, wherever the variable is, whatever's next to it, this is multiplication, we're going to divide. So divide both sides by 10. These 10s cancel out and left with x. And 1,400 divided by 10 is 140. Alright, so why don't you try numbers 6 through 11 on that same page, and then when you're done, raise your hand and you can get those checked.